Cool. Thank you so much, first of all, for having me here. When Joyjit mentioned that we have to speak for 30 minutes at a stretch, I thought my pauses have to be longer than Atal Bihari Vajpayee's. But let's see how this goes. Uh, uh, First things first, thank you again for having me here, and I'm incredibly excited and intimidated to speak in front of all of you. Uh, First of all, yeah, I'm a journalist. I've been reporting from rural India for the past 8, 9 years, and I will be speaking about surveillance of Muslims in rural India, as well as anti-child marriage campaigns in rural India. So, sort of both sides of social media is something I plan to talk about. Last night, Hussein and I basically exchanged notes and discussed what we were going to talk about. And we realized that our talks kind of complement each other's. He's spoken so compellingly about the larger hate speech pandemic in India and the vocabulary uh, that the right wing groups have been using against Muslims. And I plan to take you into the villages and how uh, that sort of unfolds for everyday people, everyday Muslims in their everyday lives. So, right, right. So Hussein cited the same data set with 668 hate speeches in India, but I want to focus on Maharashtra because it's a very crucial state in India right now, politically speaking, and it's a state I've been reporting from over the past, particularly over the past few months, in and out of several districts. It is one state where the BJP has some sort of resistance from the opposition parties, which is why they are very desperate to sort of wrest control back from some of the things that some of the ground that they've lost. And the way they wrest control, they sort of want to regain control of the state is by vitiating atmosphere, is by polarizing the electorate. And it's my home state as well. It's got 118 out of 668 hate speech events, which ranks at the top. Now it's supposed to be one of the more progressive states. It has given us several thinkers, but for the first time, I think in recent memory, Maharashtra has actually outdone UP and Gujarat in terms of hate speech. Uh, so how does that sort of yeah, it has. So how did it start? It you can clear it. The changes have not been uh, incremental in that sense, as far as Maharashtra is concerned. For the first 2.5 years after 2019, the state was governed by a coalition of three regional parties led by Uddhav Thackeray. And I'll give you an example of what had happened in 2021 during the Ram Navami procession in Aurangabad when currently the opposition parties were governing the state. There was a procession in Aurangabad, which is now Sambhajinagar. Uh, uh, Ram Navami procession was basically passing by a mosque, and the organizer said that let's turn down the music. We are passing by a mosque. Let's respect the faith of our Muslim brothers and sisters, and we'll once we cross the mosque, we'll resume our DJ. There's no reason to have any tension. We have to all coexist. That was 2021. A year later, same city, same festival, same procession. For the next 2 days, the city was burning and riots unfolded. It was it was hell. One of the very badly hit cities was Aurangabad during the Ramnami processions. Now, what changed in that year? It was just the government had changed, and the way people sort of started uh, police sort of started governing the state. That changed and it emboldened people on the ground. So in that context, I want to speak about the social media, how social media has been used to persecute Muslims. During those speeches, during those several rallies that were held in Maharashtra after June 2022, several right wing ideologues, Hindutva leaders, BJP politicians ended up giving speeches that Hussein has mentioned. So I won't go into detail of that, but there was a lot of focus on calling Muslims descendants of Aurangzeb. They were calling them Aurangzeb ki aulad. And so what happened after that was Aurangzeb, who generally wouldn't be part of conversation in any normal house. I mean, the guy died in 1700s. I mean, so There's no he doesn't feature in larger conversations that in the household. He became a sort of symbol of resistance or defiance to a lot of young Muslims, and they started uploading photographs on their Instagram stories and WhatsApp stories. Uh, I have come across at least 14 FIRs filed against young Muslim boys for uploading these photographs and stories on Instagram and WhatsApp. And in all the cases, what happened was in all the cases, they uploaded the stories or Instagram or whatever. And immediately within the first 5 minutes, their family members, horrified, called them up and said, "What the hell are you doing? Delete it, take it down." So they did. But I mean, yet within the first 5 minutes, the screenshots were taken and sent to right wing groups, who then went to the police station calling for an FIR against the concerned boys. Now, how did the right wing groups have access to those Instagram stories within the first 5 minutes? And that is where I think, and that is, I think, one of the most heartbreaking things that I've noticed while reporting. Those are, so these are Instagram stories, these are WhatsApp stories, and they are only accessible to people you are on who are on your contact lists, and they are accessible to people you allow them to follow on your Instagram. So basically these are friends, there's not too many degrees of separation. So these are Hindu friends who are basically unleashing hell upon their former friends who used to be, they've sort of grown up together, been to school together, had dinners at each other's houses, but they are the same people who are now reporting that status, taking screenshots and giving and arming the right wing groups with those screenshots. What happened after that was this is basically again the lateral surveillance that we've seen. There's possibility we've seen possibilities of lists being maintained as well, and that is something that was quite troubling. And I'll give you an example from Satara and uh, uh, Satara and Kolhapur, two districts of Maharashtra, which I reported from, and I wanted to sort of just establish or elaborate through these examples how it unfolds for Muslims on the ground. Uh, what happened was in a village called Savarde in Kolhapur, Muhammad Yusuf, a 19-year-old boy, uploaded a status. Right wing groups started organizing rallies, calling for extermination of Muslims, calling for their economic boycott, calling for all sorts of things that Hussein just mentioned in his speech. Uh, the police obviously filed an FIR against the boy for spreading religious enmity. Uh, that wasn't enough for the right wing groups. They wanted him to be charged with sedition. So they increased the intensity of their rallies, increased the, the attack on the family. They wanted the family to be kicked out of the village. They wanted the family's water and electricity to be cut off for for a WhatsApp status, basically. It went to the extent it got to the extent that the family eventually had to decide to leave the village for a bit because it was no longer feasible, or they didn't feel safe any longer to be in the village. And this is what this was the piece I did uh, after BJP sort of retook Maharashtra. And this was a story I did about uh, yeah, and this is what I wanted to show you. This quote basically, uh, it's a quote from Yunus's father, who said that I was scared and anxious. While I locked the door, I told my family that this could be the last time we see our home. If it survives, it's ours. If it doesn't, it was God's will. He basically locked the door, walked out of the family. The son is in jail, and they lived in exile for a couple of weeks until the matter sort of died down. The boy stayed in jail for 10, 12 days only because no lawyer would take up their case as well. The right wing groups had threatened all the lawyers in Kolhapur to not take up his case. Eventually, a Muslim lawyer took up his case and he got bail in half a day. That's that that's all that a lawyer had to do. Half a day is all that he needed to get the guy out of jail. But he ended up spending 12 days, 13 days inside prison. 19-year-old boy, and he got out. So even the lawyers sort of towed the line in that sense in Kolhapur. The second example was what I wanted to elaborate. of this guy Mohammad Saad. He's 21 years old, academically very bright, pursuing computer engineering. He's from a village in Satara, again a Western Maharashtra belt. He's 21 years old, and his cousin who lives in Pune had uploaded a status or a WhatsApp post on Aurangzeb. Now, Pune is a fairly bigger city. It's relatively difficult to attack someone in Pune. It's not entirely difficult as we have seen in the recent past, but still, relatively speaking, it's not as easy to attack someone in the middle of the city than it is uh, in a village. So they couldn't attack him physically, and while sort of going through their Facebook posts, his Facebook posts and social media activity, the right wing groups realized that his cousin, Saad, is based in one of the villages of Satara. At 2 in the night, some people landed up at his doorstep, called him out, asked him if he's Aurangzeb ki aulad, if he's a descendant of Aurangzeb. And by then, he knew what had happened. So he knew why he was being targeted. So before he could seek any help, it was 2 in the night. He was beaten up black and blue with hockey sticks, iron rods, and those nails that they have on their spikes that they have on their uh, what do you call the knuckles. And he was beaten up black and blue. He could have died had it not been for the police that were coincidentally patrolling the same area at the time. So they saw the police van and they ran away. He was there, bloodied. The police picked him up. Uh, they took him to the hospital, and the first thing he did after reaching the hospital was vomited blood. He was in hospital for 15 days, and this is what they had done to him in in those 10-15 minutes that they beat him up. That's his father holding the photograph. Uh, Ever since that incident, he has uh, he has not been himself. He's someone who secured more than 93-94% marks in his 12th standard examinations, and his grades have significantly dropped since that incident. He has not been able to go back to college. It's been almost a year, and he keeps finding reasons to not go back to the college because it's an hour away from his village. So he keeps sort of looking over his shoulders. He keeps coming up with he says I'll study from home, and I'll try and make up for not going to college. And that's the kind of impact it has had on him. His uncle, who's 75-year-old, who was 75-year-old, died of a heart attack 3 days after he was attacked, because I mean, he didn't have any health issues, but the humiliation and the insult that the family had to face, he couldn't take it, and he passed away 3 days later. uh, So what they have done, besides surveilling Muslims on social media, is they have also taken it a step further. They have uh, they've begun to pretend to be Muslims on social media to land them in trouble. Uh, in many cases, you will find Muslims under Muslims' name. There'll be an objectionable comment or an objectionable status that will be mostly be a morphed photograph, and that would be used to trigger a riot, trigger an assault on Muslims, and uh, and of course the police always looks the other way. I mean, the next example I'm going to give is from a village in Satara again. It's a village called Puse Savli, and every single Muslim in that village could see the attack coming from a mile. The only people who did not see it coming were the Satara police. Uh, what happened in Puse Savli was, so yeah, this is. I went back to the village like 6 months later, and the charred vehicles were still right outside the mosque uh, that was attacked. What happened in Puse Savli was three screenshots. Three screenshots went viral in September first week. Uh, all the three screenshots were under the name of three Muslim boys living in that village, and in that in those comments on Instagram, they were seen abusing Hindu gods. Some choicest of words. I don't think anybody would use them against any god, believer, non-believer. But under Muslim names, those comments were seen to be made. Now, immediately when the first screenshot went viral, and these are all basically mobilized on WhatsApp. They make those screenshots and then circulate it to create fertile ground for incensed rallies, and then it leads to physical assault. Uh, so after the first screenshot went viral, the senior Muslim members of the community took that boy under whose name was the comment was made, took that boy to the police and said, "Look, this is what we have come across. Please take action if he is guilty, but protect other Muslims who have nothing to do with the screenshot." So they went to the police. The police filed an FIR against the boy, found out, figured out, and tried to figure out uh, if those screenshots are indeed genuine or not. It's been, what have we been, April? It's been 7 months since that screenshot went viral. They have still not been able to figure out if it is morphed or not. What has, but the damage it was supposed to do, it's been done on 10th of uh, on 10th of September. After those three screenshots were made viral, a mob descended on that village and started torching Muslim homes, Muslim businesses, Muslim vehicles, and attacked anyone who they could in the process. Uh, Monetarily, I think economically, the Muslim community has suffered a loss of 30 lakh rupees within that couple of hours. They suffered a loss of 30 lakh rupees within those couple of hours. Uh, and as they passed from that from the Muslim area, they went to the mosque. Now I'll come back to the mosque in a bit. This is Aisha Hassan. She's a lawyer. She loves cricket. She's a huge fan of Babar Azam. Her husband Nurul is a huge fan of Virat Kohli. Right? So cricket banter was basically their love language, to the extent that people were surprised that they had an arranged marriage. Whenever Babar Azam scored 100, she would make sure that her husband knows that he's doing well, and whenever Virat Kohli did well, he would mock her, and he would sort of, it was like their thing. Uh, Nurul Hassan was in that mosque when the mob descended onto the mosque. When he called her from the mosque and he told her to not step out because all hell had broken loose. Uh, she said, because she was also worried about him. She asked him, "Where are you?" He said, "I'm inside the mosque, so I think I will be safe." He was wrong. There was for the longest time, even among people who didn't like each other, an unwritten rule that we won't attack each other's place of worship. That rule has gone. I mean, even among criminals, there is code among honor code among, that what's the term they use? Honor among thieves. These guys have stooped lower. In fact, if they stoop further any lower, they might hit oil. Uh, they what uh, so what they've done, what they did was they started attacking the mosque. They started uh, they tried to break into the mosque. People, obviously, there were 10, 11 people who had absolutely nothing to do with those screenshots. They were praying, offering their evening prayers, uh, locked the door from inside. But it's a village mosque. It doesn't have the iron gates that the bigger mosques normally have, or bigger places of worship normally has. So they started sort of banging against the door. With each blow, the latch loosened, and the mob eventually entered. Nurul was one of the people who was lynched to death inside the mosque at within a few minutes. He was killed with there was a construction going on around it, so they used some of the iron rods, tiles, and broke it on his head. He died on the spot. 10, 11 others were seriously injured. And Aisha told me that she couldn't believe until she saw his body. She was 6 months pregnant at the time, and she had just lost her husband. What happened uh, after that? I mean, I went back to the village 6 months later, and I found the place a completely divided house. Uh, there were old friendships lost. I mean, it's uh, old friendships lost. People used to dine with each other, now exchange cold glances. And those three Muslim boys, under whose name who were accused of making those comments, ran away. They are still in exile. They have not been able to return to their village out of fear and retribution, even though it's not been proved at all that they were behind those screenshots. He's one of those boys. He's 21, 22 years old. His name is Muzammil, and I met him outside of Satara, wherever he's staying right now. Uh, he told me that he meets his parents every once in a month, and there's little conversation. Every time they meet, they just break down in tears, and he has to put up a brave face in front of them, and he has to tell them that everything will be fine. Uh, Even though his his life and his has completely come apart. He used to run a successful ice cream parlor in the village. It was a rented place, and the owner was a Hindu. So after the incident happened, the Hindu owner basically kicked him out and said that once you are proven innocent, you will get that ice cream parlor back. He used to be his own man. Uh, Now he's working at a grocery store, earning 2-3 thousand bucks for 4,000 bucks, I think, a month, and he's completely uh, and he doesn't know. Basically, he's completely uh, disoriented. When I met him, he didn't know what to do, how his life had turned upside down uh, within a matter of few days. And he still doesn't know when he'd be able to return to the village, when he'd be able to return to the place he calls home. So I think the sinister use of social media has completely changed the face of villages. In Pusesawli, for example, uh, there used to be this ritual called para, and I think a lot of people might be uh, familiar with it. It's a Hindu ritual where Hindu religious figures come and chant mantras and so on and so forth. And the ritual in Pusesawli was that it used to be an 8 day affair, and the ritual in Pusesawli was that uh, Muslims would offer the first meal of that ritual. That's the kind of equation they've had over the years. Uh, in fact, Aisha told me that the people who were accused in Nurul's murder used to call him Bhai, and so that's it's a complete breakdown of personal equations. It's a complete breakdown of friendships. Even children have not been spared from the poison, and uh, so this was the mosque in which they, they killed Nurul Hasan. uh, and and one thing, so as I said, even the even the children have not been able to remain immune from this poison. And I met one of the Muslim senior members of the Muslim community, and he said something to me that just absolutely broke my heart. He said his 9-year-old son came back from school one day and said that Hindu boys had stopped playing with him because they don't want to play with a K2A, and at that so that vocabulary has reached all the way down to 9-year-olds and 10-year-olds. They're practicing it in school. It is so. I don't know how much time we will need to sort of recover from the damage that we have done, because we've as they say, catch them early, catch them young. The right wingers have done exactly that. Uh, the change. So this is one of the so as I said, this is the face of villages have completely changed. Uh, the way they used to celebrate each other's festivals. I mean, Muslims used to be part of the Ganesh mandals that organized Ganesh Chaturthi festivals in villages. Ram Navami used to be a common affair. Weddings used to be a common affair. All of that has completely now gone out of the window. This is one of the dargahs in a village called Malgaon in Satara. It is intact because people in the village have had to uh, fight really hard to keep it intact for years. I mean, it's older than uh, it goes back to 1918, 1917s when it was built, and it has been it has been one of the places where kids used to study, offer prayers. Those who want to join police forces have basically trained around this place because it's an open place. Until it was always a symbol of sort of uh, religious coexistence, because everyone was part of had something to do with that dargah. A Hindu boy who used to study over here has done some renovation, has sponsored some of the renovation. So that's the association that the village has had with this particular dargah until a few months ago, when a right wing group said that it's an encroachment and we need to take it down. So immediately after that happened, Muslims and Hindus came together and wrote a letter to the administration and said that this is not what the village believes in. and they had to really go out of their way to protect this place. Now the question is how long they'll be able to protect it, because there are several religious monuments of Muslims that have come under uh, attack, and they've been targeted. And their existence has come under threat. This is a senior man called Hussein Shikalgar. He lives in Vardhangarh. Again, that Vardhangarh is known to have like four monuments belonging to four different religions, and he was one of the people who used to protect and look after them. Now those four monuments have been reduced to three because one mazar has now been destroyed. Uh, so today, yeah, just a sec. This is not a Vajpayee pause. I'm just so today, more than half the population in India, which is like 759 people, are online. Most of them are active on WhatsApp. The country has 467 million active YouTube users, the most in the world, and 399 million are now in rural India. 399 people are online in rural India. For the first time in India's history, rural population outnumbered the urban population with access to social media. So now you can imagine the effect the right wing groups have had on rural India. But even before the technology had penetrated rural India, what I've observed is they've always been on top of whatever technology that's been available to them. And I had done this story for Wired magazine a few months ago, which looked at the journey, it traces the journey of right wing and technology. And uh, one of the things I managed to sort of dig out and stitch together was an incident from 2012 in a village in Aurangabad, where a man walked into a temple in one of the villages. He was carrying a laptop and a hard drive. He plugged that hard drive into the laptop in a temple of one of the villages in Aurangabad. 40 people were sitting in front of him, and he showed explicit videos of cow slaughter, love jihad, and and all the videos that basically you know alienate Muslims. Among those 40 people who watched those videos in the temple was a 19-year-old college dropout who used to cultivate his father's farmland. That was the first time he came in contact with any kind of right wing ideology. A year and a half later, he ended up shooting one of the most prominent secularists and rationalists in India called Narendra Dabholkar. So that was a journey of 1.5 years, which went from not knowing anything about right wing and their ideology, watching a couple of videos, getting sort of quote unquote excited by it, and then 1.5 years later, he killed Narendra Dabholkar in Pune. That is the impact these guys have, even though this was back when the penetration of internet was 12% in India. These guys were traveling from village to village with show and tell sessions. Now, the motive that uh, drove his radicalization, cow slaughter, love jihad, and the otherness of India's Muslim population, are still the core narratives of far right propaganda today. But today they have WhatsApp and YouTube to disseminate that. So uh, their work has uh, kind of gone down, but uh, they've their physical efforts have gone down, but they've now just replaced it and exponentially delivered that content to people's doorstep. One of the things that I have noticed while the proliferation of social media is that social media has now begun to mirror mainstream media. Whatever is picked up on social media, mainstream media makes sure that they do a show on it. And that's how we have begun to build this mass, brainwashing of Indian masses that has happened through social media and mainstream media parallelly. So I have 1 minute, which doesn't leave me a lot of time to talk about the child marriage story that I was going to talk about. But yeah, sure. Can I have like, yeah, thank you. So I'll just wrap this up and I'll speak. I had spoken to Jajit and told him that I will also speak about some of the good things that have happened because of social media in rural India. And I'll not, yeah. So this I want to speak about in briefly. I'll talk about this initiative that two child rights activists have taken in Maharashtra's agrarian region of Bid. That's These are Tatwashil Kamble and Ashok Pangde, two firebrand activists who have used WhatsApp to their advantage and stopped at least 4,500 child marriages in the past 10 years. And they've been quite an inspiration. Most of those child marriages in Bede are linked with sugarcane industry. The sugarcane cutters are basically hired in pairs by contractors, so that one chops the cane, the other ties them into a bundle and loads them onto the truck. So when you hire in pairs, that that basically allows contractors to do the what hisab, do the hisab क्या बोलते हैं इंग्लिश में यार, accounting, sorry, do the accounting well. So what that happens, what that basically means is that it opens up, it sort of encourages marginalized communities who are working in sugarcane fields to marry their children off early. For the groom side, it is one stomach less to feed, and for the bride side, it is one less stomach to feed. For the groom side, it opens up an extra source of income because they can also now travel to the sugarcane fields. What Ashok Tangde and Tatvashil Kamble have done is what they used to do is they've been working on this extensively for the past 15 years, but getting adequate documents in time and stopping child marriages used to be a very tedious effort. It's also they've cultivated 2,000 informants across the district. They've gone from village to village, and the informants could be anybody. It could be a teacher who knows that underage marriage is not legal. It could be someone elder in the village. It could also be a guy who has a crush on that girl who's getting married. Anybody who understands that this marriage shouldn't happen can be their informant. So they have cultivated those people, but being an informant is also a risky business. You can be ostracized in a village if you are calling out a child marriage. So they have to sort of be extra careful in getting the school living certificate, which is the age proof. Uh, so now with WhatsApp, what they've managed to do is they just have to click photographs of that age proof and just transfer it on WhatsApp, and they don't have to physically go and carry the proof that will eventually enable these two to stop those child marriages. And that has allowed them to mobilize people at within half an hour, and an hour, and they can land up at a wedding hall and stop and intervene and basically intercept a child marriage in time. Ashok Tangade has one complaint though. He says that I always get wedding cards, but none of them are invitations because they're all uh, because they're all calls for him to come and stop those weddings. Uh, but in 2023, a man walked up to his office somewhere around May and June, and he had a neatly wrapped box in his hand. He walked up and he introduced himself. Ashok Tangade didn't recognize him at first, and he told him that you were someone who had stopped my daughter's child marriage 3 years ago, and I didn't understand it back then, but now I do. Today she is 21 years old. She's a graduate. After you stopped her child marriage, we made sure that she gets her education. She completes her education. She's a graduate now. The boy was finalized after she agreed to it, and I want you to be the first person who I give this invitation to. So for a change, he had received a wedding card that was an invitation. So yeah, that's my talk. Thank you so much for the extra 5 minutes as well.